Hi everyone, my name is James, and by day I'm a senior technical artist at Unity Technologies, and in the evening on weekends I am an indie dev, also using Unity to create my indie game. And this game is called The Answer Is Never, and it's a third-person action-adventure game that takes place in the mid-1980s. You play as a female protagonist, Samantha, and there are going to be a sequence of supernatural events that occur in her small Midwestern town that she has to deal with, that sort of collides with her quiet life. And very interesting story with that. And we're not going to really talk about any of that yet. I'm holding a lot of that close to the chest. But what I wanted to talk about today was managing the sort of overwhelming amount of art content that you may need to acquire or produce for a game like this that's 3D and has so many different aspects to the environment here. So what you're looking at here is the Unity project here with I'm just showing a couple of proxy scenes here. I am not going to show anything too detailed here. This is just to explain a basic premise, but we're in Unity 2023.1. This is a little unusual. Usually I will work on a project in an LTS, which is a little bit of an older version. But this version of the TextStream beta has been, I tested it quite a bit for a couple of weeks ahead of time. It seems to be a pretty robust version of the editor. I've been able to deploy it to 2 different platforms fine. So I want to be forward thinking, considering that I'll be working on this game for a year or a year and a half. And I don't want to be on an older, more legacy version of the editor. So 2023, I wanted to be forward thinking on that. And I'm in Universal Rendering Pipeline. I do want this to be scalable for future consideration of mobile and VR, and I don't want to box myself in with HDRP on that. And I think for the stylized aesthetic, I know for the stylized aesthetic that URP will suit these purposes 100% fine. So I can just hit the play button here, and we can walk around the scene and we can see we have Cinemachine integration here with a smooth camera to follow this character. This is a custom character controller. It is not Unity's standard controller, but this is Unity's standard assets third-person proxy character. And I don't have any character art in the game yet. We do have character illustrations or concept art for those to be built out. Enable run mode here. So they will be built out when the schedule allows here. I also have a URP render feature that sort of silhouettes the character behind these buildings. It's disabled at the moment because it wasn't playing well with the screen space ambient occlusion feature as well. But this was really just to test out the movement of the character, how it felt in the world. Also trying to gauge scale for these assets, scale between things like vehicles to very tiny props to 2-story massive homes, and how I should frame the camera, scale the camera. There are some zoom features as well where the camera zooms in. This is the exterior test, and then on the interior test, you can see that the field of view is zoomed in quite a bit more. So, and when we come into the interior of a structure, we want to be able to see a lot of these details and interact with these things as we solve some kind of problem or move one thing to another place, or gather things for an inventory. Basically solve puzzles. We will need to have a more granular view of things on top of tables. So we're zoomed in. This will be a dynamic camera feature that dynamically zooms in interiors and is more zoomed out in exteriors. The player will also be able to control that zoom level as well. So that's just an interesting first look at some of the prototyping here happening in pre-production. What I really wanted to show was how I'm sort of trying to manage and think about all of the art content that I'm going to need in this game. Let me zoom in on this pretty good. So this is Google Sheets, and I'm using this to track and manage the status of all of the art content I think I'm going to need. And this is what I call a naive list, meaning this is a lake and forest environment. And obviously for a lake and forest, we're probably going to need more than 7 assets. So it's a dynamic list that will continually be added to, but these are the naive first pass sort of iteration on these are the sort of those core things that I think we'll need. And as we go along here, we'll look and see these different subjects here: lake and forest, neighborhood, high school. And so in this game, I'm taking the approach of something like a Netflix show where shots take place in environments and scenes happen there. And so the player in this game will play in that scene or that shot. So lake and forest will be the environment for that shot or scene. And obviously these are some of the places, this first pass of where I think some of these scenes and shots will take place. We do have a decently robust story with beats and arc already established. I already had hired contractors through Fiverr, 2 of them. One of them I finally landed on, and that story got developed along really well, working back and forth with her. And I will share more on the story side of that as we go along, not to give away any of the core premise or anything like that. But yeah, so these columns represent these different areas or environments that you would go in. Some of them obviously have a lot more than others. There's a lot more that goes on in the bedroom of the player. So there's a lot of items here in detail. Some of these things involve things you need to pick up and take elsewhere or use somewhere else. But what's interesting about this sheet was I leaned on some of the built-in algorithms that Google Sheet allows you to do, or formulas, that's what they call them, formulas, to auto-tally all of this stuff. So all of these things right here for, say, lake and forest are actually being auto-propagated from a sheet down here. And you'll see all these different sheets for the different environments. So lake and forest is being brought in from the lake and forest sheet here. So if I just type test asset, hit enter, we go back to master. Test asset propagates. Our total has updated here, now 129 assets. If I try to hit delete here in the master sheet, I can't delete this. So it's auto-propagated and from this, which is really cool. And so how that's happening is this concatenate and count if function here. I'm going to go through here real quick, but what it's doing, concatenate is just cramming these strings together or these words into single lines of text. And then it's saying count if. So count if is not like a regular count. It's counting if some kind of condition is true or false. And it's looking into, say, the lake and forest right here. It's looking through the fields A4 through A200, and it's saying, are they true? And then it's just adding those up. It's adding those up as values. Count if, count if, count if. And then it's actually dividing them in half. And it's saying count totals. So rather than if something is true or false, just count the total amount of entries from the lake and forest sheet, the neighborhood sheet, the high school sheet, and of course the same set of fields there where the totals would be. And that is exactly how we're getting the assets that are marked true versus the total amount of the assets. So 18 are marked true, meaning 18 are completed, and then 128 to do. So where's the true coming from? If we click on this, we can see that our field up here says false. When we check this checkbox, it says true. Now the checkbox is a built-in functionality in Google Sheets. I didn't need to implement this, but if I just click 2 of these on lake and forest, and this updates and says you have 2 of 9 completed from the lake and forest. When I go back to master, we now have 20 of 128 completed. The percentage also updated, so now it's telling me you have about 84% of all of this stuff, everything here, left to do. So why would I want to put all of this on a master sheet? Well, I was starting to get concerned about as I was diving into, say, the high school, and I was setting up these, we need a desk. But then I found myself going in the player's bedroom and going, yeah, there's also a desk in here. And I thought, well, how am I going to compare these redundancies between, say, the school, the player's bedroom, or even like the kitchen? Like how I don't want to make 3 different types of coffee mugs. I'd like to reuse the mugs that I've created for the kitchen in the bedroom. So how do I track that redundancy? That's this master sheet. So I can hit Control F and type in desk, and I can see all of the desks, and I can see where there's overlap, right? Now, I'm having a hard time fitting all of this on screen because I'm zoomed in at like 150% here for the video. But what's cool here is I can see, okay, student desk chair, teacher's desk. And so I'm not overlapping on this, which is really good. And there doesn't need to be any reuse because the student desk in her room is going to be quite a bit different than teacher's desk. So and there won't be reuse there. And I'm using the semantics of the name to basically define that, right? So say in the forest, we may have a set of forest type trees, but when we go to downtown or the city, there's going to be, and they're not even added in, but there's going to be city style trees. And so the trees in the city would be smaller. The limbs would be trimmed off on the bottom. They would be in a planter and they'd be groomed and cleaned up, right? Whereas your forest trees would be wild growing behemoth pines or something like that. So we need to use the semantics to say these are forest trees and these are city trees. And each one of these is allowing me to track how much is completed. So I could even go through them and get granular and say, I haven't done any work on the lake and forest. And as I go through them and see, wow, I have done more than 50% of the work on the bedroom assets. Like they're mostly all there. So it allows me to also balance and say, let's go, we've done quite a bit of the living room, almost 50% of it, a little more. Let's go over and work on lake and forest because we have nothing there. I can also go back to my master list and sort of see where most of the effort would be. So player bedroom would be it, but downtowns, there's a lot there, and there's also a lot in living room. And I go back over to my living room and I see, but 50% of that is pretty much done. So what else is a high impact list here? And so this is just a really cool way for me to be able to track and manage tons of artwork. Again, it's 128 assets now, but I anticipate this will be well over 200 to 300 different 3D models and assets. Now I'm using other methods of project management. This is just to be granular, specifically on art content. But I am using Trello. So here we see the Trello board, and there is a very long backlog here of all these different things to do. There are the list of things to complete, things that would be in progress. I'm very much in pre-production at this point, so a lot of this stuff hasn't been propagated. There is also this is the confluence, so there is a typical GDD. That stuff was on a ticket to get done early. This got done pretty much in early February. Again, it's a living document, but the core stuff is there to design pillars, so everything that I make or do in this game needs to contribute to these design pillars, and if they don't add to it, then I shouldn't probably do them. The game loops, what the player is going to experience, or what are those things that you're going to be repeatedly doing over and over and over. So I need to focus my design pillars around supporting also what the player is going to do constantly. Story is not plugged in here because I just didn't want that layered in here yet. That's in Drive. There is a document with the arc of the story beats, the levels, how they line up to the story, and then the overall story. Part of the story that we didn't get fleshed out yet are the character arcs in it. I don't know how granular really we want to go there, but we do have character concept art. I need to update some of this here. We have our protagonist best friend. We're missing Gregory, the father, and then another friend here, an extraterrestrial, which is given away here. And that concept art is done, but it's just not plugged in because I haven't updated Confluence just yet. And then again, I have Jira. Here is the Jira for The Answer Is Never. And there's a ton of stuff in here there was a lot of pre-production done in Jira, and then a lot in production. There's also a roadmap here. I don't have a sprint going at the moment, and I should. But yeah, so we have a timeline here to where we go through pre-pro, production, bug fixing, and then launch. Again, there is no sprint done. I need to add, I'm basically working this asset list and then going to bring over all of these entries, hopefully as bigger sort of epics or something, and break those down into groups of tasks. I don't want to bring over 200 or 300 different tickets. This is insane to think about. So I think I'm going to try to bundle them into groups. They're already sort of grouped, so I can go into neighborhood and say, this is the ticket right here, all of the neighborhood assets, right? Or this is the epic, and under that epic, these are all the different little stories. Or I think I'm just going to group them by scenes. And I think that's good too, because I can test out functionality in that scene, and I can actually start integrating the code logic, some of the story and narrative dialogue stuff, event systems being triggered and stuff like that. And I think that that would be very helpful. So really good. There's a really good infrastructure here in place. This is all of the documentation for the game so far. So really strong infrastructure in place. And I was just hoping that this, presenting this sort of management of all of the art content, I was hoping that this would be helpful or eye-opening for some other folks who may be indie devs working by themselves with contractors externally and trying to manage that. So anyway, I hope that this was helpful, and I'm going to wrap this video up, and then hopefully I'll have another devlog for this game here with more to show. I would really like to show more of the rendering aesthetic. I gathered a couple of comparable games here, pretty much like Lost Ember, Firewatch, The First Tree. Some of these games are absolutely beautiful. I like how a lot of the noise and a lot of texture detail has been sort of removed out for color gradients. And that's definitely what I'm leaning towards. And that's the rendering aesthetic of that. The Falconeer was a huge inspiration. Tom Solis, I think his name is. And he did his entire worlds and characters and everything textureless. So all based on gradients and colors and shader work and probably vertex colors and stuff like that. And as an indie dev working primarily by yourself, I think it's really important to figure out how to get around that whole UVing and texturing and materializing everything. And so that's probably a really, really smart way. And plus this is simple but beautiful and gorgeous. So I think the next update we may talk about, and I'll be able to show up some of the rendering aesthetics. So until next time, I'll see you guys later.